Welcome back, everyone, to the Intel Stream Masters in Cologne here in 2015. We just had our first match with the QG Reapers going ahead and getting that win for themselves, moving on to tomorrow. But right now we have two more teams awaiting their fate. It is going to be Cloud9 going up against H2k. And of course, now we have Frostcurrent joining us here at the desk after commentating that last game and coming into this one. I know even before that last game happened, when we spoke earlier, you said this upcoming match, maybe the matchup that you should be looking forward to the most, C9 versus H2k.
I mean, frankly, I think that this is probably the match in this tournament. Frankly, I think I'll even go on and say that whoever wins this, I think, has probably the best chance to win the entire tournament.
Oh, okay. Would you guys agree, or to some extent at least?
I think it's kind of hard to predict how well they're going to play, but the trend that is ongoing with the teams is the fact H2k still have Prolly, has shown the fact that he's really good in his drafts, really good with H2k in the past, really good performance overall. C9 on the other hand as well are really good in best of series, the regional qualifier in the past, also in the LCS. They still have the core that kind of brings in the innovation and the drafting. So as a whole in this game, I think QG should just watch and learn when it comes to drafting, because they will need it coming up against Fnatic.
Yeah, they definitely seem to need a little bit work on that one. Tomorrow's probably not going to be as, or any easier rather, than Dignitas. Dexter, what about you? What do you think about these two teams?
So, first of all, I think Cloud9 was always a team that is like the first one that picks up stuff. And with all the changes coming into this patch and everything, I'm really excited to see how they adapted to Vision. We know that Rush is not a jungler that bought like a lot of Vision, but right now no jungler is buying any Vision. Like no one is buying Sidestone. Just go full damage and see what you can do. But I think I want to see what Hai does to the team as a supporter. Like, can he be the supporter that Cloud9 needs? Can he be playing on the same level as Lemon Nation did, with like the shot calling qualities? Yeah, it's gonna be really exciting. And of course, H2k, the super team that is coming in, it's gonna be like a really good match regardless.
And I think that's really important to kind of piggyback on that idea, is we're going to really find out how influential Hai is in just his shot calling, and if the genius of elimination will carry over from the support position into the coaching position. I like that you brought up innovation in terms of Vision for Cloud9. They've always been on the forefront of that, and with the Vision game completely changing, again, will elimination, how important was his role really in Cloud9 as like a backbone for that in the game.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see. Of course, we'll have a little bit more time to break down each team separately, but all of you guys at home, what do you guys think? We've given some brief ideas overall. If you have any strong opinions about which team's going to take this one, please let us know. Twitter.com/IEM. Now going to this matchup, like we just prefaced a little bit, with some twists in the roster, it is going to be Cloud9.
I think it's pretty important to attend IEM Katowice. It's one of the few international tournaments that happen every year. We went the previous 2 years, actually.
After an astonishing run through the North American regional playoffs and a strong first week at the 2015 World Championships, Cloud9 looked to stabilise and consolidate after a breakout performance in the last few months.
Well, I retired and then I had to come back because the team was failing in a sense. And I came in and brought the team back together, and now here I am playing again. I'm pretty much ready to show people that our team is still good, that I'm still good, even though I'm in a different role, like two different roles, and I'm excited to show everyone what our team is made of.
I love it. I retired. I was enjoying that retiring life, but I just had to come back and save our team, and here we are, doing well again. I'm ready to prove that Cloud9's still a good team. But credit to him. That is kind of what happened on paper, right? He came back and he said, "You know what? I'm making sure C9's going to Worlds, boys," and they went to Worlds, and they almost moved on. It was a heartbreaking moment for C9 fans, but the first week was incredible. I mean, they were looking really strong.
I think Yamato can say something to that.
I'm not going to predict some 06 right now. But then again, it's like looking at C9, I feel like the one thing, the thing that stands out the most to me is the fact their decision-making is going to shine through. But will they get to that point? Because I can imagine sneaking high. I don't think they're going to be the strongest bot lane right away. Maybe as a whole, as a team, they will be strong. But then again, they still have balls in the top lane. So in the early game, I still see obvious weaknesses in both lanes.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And, that is the big question. And like, Hai said himself, he's like, well, I think I can still prove myself in another different role. But, we've seen it in the past. Switching around doesn't always mean you can carry on the same kind of expectations.
Well, now the question just goes to pound for pound. Is this an upgrade in terms of the roster? Yes, you lose elimination, you go to Hai, and he's untested in the support role, though we've seen him take a a change from mid into the jungle, but I think everyone can agree that Rush is one of the outstanding junglers in North America. So from High to Rush, that should be theoretically an upgrade. So pound for pound, is this the superior roster, and what kind of form will it appear in? We know that High took off All-Stars to practice for this. They're probably one of the most practiced teams coming into this IEM event.
And it's like, with that in mind, it's like looking at Rush in North America, this split and both splits overall, I don't think there was a lot of junglers that kind of could compete with him. So I feel like this is the true test, because Jankos in Europe is one of the most prominent, more prominent junglers, and I think this is the true test before I can myself define Rush, because of course in North America he's been slaughtering people, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I think I agree with you, is that, yeah, Rush has a lot of hype built around him, but it is relatively kind of conserved in one area and one region, especially geographically speaking. But overall, let's assume that Rush is definitely an upgrade over High. Then is it okay for High to not necessarily be an upgrade as a support, as long as his game sense and his leadership shines through in the team? Do you think then it's still overall you can say, oh, this is a better roster?
So here's the thing. Just look at Cloud9 before they didn't have High. They were like clueless. They didn't know what to do in game. The second High came in, it's like a unit again. It's like Cloud9, how we know it. They know what to do. They know how to move the map. And I'm pretty sure that High is like, he's like the brain of the team. You can say that. He knows what to do in the game, on the fly. He's very creative when it comes to shot calling. I mean, I just remember this like Metal Gear Solid scene when he was like doing this weird things. But yeah, I think High is like the most important player to C9 as a, no matter where he plays and which position, I think he's the most important piece to like the whole Cloud9 roster.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I think a lot of us will agree, and especially Cloud9 fans for sure. Now, they do have to go up against an opponent here at the Intel Extreme Masters, and that, as some of you might say, might be that super team from Europe. It is going to be H2k.
Following the departure of Kissing, Lolex and Hjanen, H2k had a big void to fill.
The preparation for the event was like super bad. Like we tried our best, like we played the most possible games as we could have. So I really hope it will be enough to at least take on Cloud9, like the American team. Every single one of us is at least, like I would say, top 3, top 4 in Europe. But the most like problems we have right now is that we didn't have enough time to coordinate our actions and like get enough practice. It would be amazing for me to play actually when I would play in front of Polish audience, because I never played in front of Polish audience. We had LCS in like Lille, in London, but never in Poland, so I would love that.
So there we have it, H2k. And right off the bat, what do we hear is that, contrary to C9, is that we really didn't have much time to practice as a unit. We didn't have time to practice as a team, and therefore we're not really sure how we're going to act once it comes like tournament time, once it comes match time in a professional matchup. What do you guys think, though, just pure talent-wise? Do you think maybe it's still enough to have hope for this lineup?
I think facing off against the roster of C9, I think it's a question of H2k need to seal it in the early game. They have Forgiven and Vander, and to me these are two of the most mechanically intensive players that you can think of from Europe, and that as a bot lane against High and Sneaky, I can imagine they can pressure that and get advantages. But as soon as the mid game and the late game hits, I feel like C9 would be able to take control. So it's all about that early game for H2k.
I completely agree. It's now a question of, we know that H2k is going to have an insane competitive ceiling, but have they been given the time to ramp up to it? And kind of speaking to a European super team, I kind of find it funny that, Vander, they said in the video that, they consider me, top 3 players in EU, but you look at this and they are kind of the all-stars now, but only because so many people left. I mean, Yellow Star leaves, so Vander steps up. Hooney leaves, so Odawamne now kind of the top. Sven Skaren's gone, so Jankos is like, it's my time.
Of course, I'm gone,
Dexter's gone.
Yeah. Okay, Dexter, we can say that. Yeah, you have been gone.
Gone, but forgotten.
Well, hopefully not. You are here this weekend at the desk. But yeah, overall, fair enough. It's because your talent now has a chance to shine through. But what's fair is fair. Is that, okay, you know what? If you're still top 3, you are top 3 in the region, regardless of why that may be.
So I think what H2k actually is going for them is the support jungle synergy. They have been playing forever. They should know what to do exactly to like get this advantage, what we always talked about, like support jungle synergy, how important it is. And Vander and Jenkins has been like, people call that duo like the Dandy and Marta of Europe a lot. I don't know who started that, but it's like true in a sense where highly mechanical players know what to do, and I think that's what they have to like use, that advantage that they are really practiced on those two roles, have that synergy to actually make sure that they get further ahead in the early game.
And of course, being able to, like, I coached Rocket last split, and Jankos and Vander, while they have the synergy for the early game, the mid game almost always was controlled by other players on the team. So I feel like, looking at the roster, I feel like Odoamne and H2k was always the leader. But to be fair, Odoamne's performance throughout the season has been very up and down. So with that in mind, it's all about Odoamne as well in his performance.
All right, some points to look forward to. But before we jump into the game, we also have a chance to hear from someone else who might know H2k a little bit better. We do have an interview with Prawley over on the main stage with Sean Charles.
Yes, indeed we do, Chobra. Thank you so much. Probably thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
Doing great. Back in Europe after being in the US of A, so I'm ready for the change of pace again.
Well, we're very happy to have you, and a lot of people have talked about this being a game where there's a lot of roster changes on both sides. One of them obviously is Forgiven, the new AD carry. People talking about the idea that this is really, with this team around him, his moment to shine. Would you join that theory?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun to kind of coach a team that is going to have like specific strengths, because last H2k was kind of just a really well-rounded, like trying to be a cohesive unit. So now I'm going to get to try to branch out and kind of make accent marks in the team instead of just making it really well-rounded. So it's going to be a lot different this split to kind of change how my coaching is going to be.
Well, that's actually a nice segue, because you have that. God bless you.
Bless you.
That's a nice segue there, because it is your return in the coaching role. So, and you had some success last year. A lot of fan support, fans right here in the studio already holding up banners. What's on the menu for you? What's your plan?
Man, my plan is not too intensive at the moment. It's going to be kind of a see how it comes along as it unravels. Because, yeah, this is still a really new team. We've only had, like, 2 days of scrimming, so right now I haven't really gotten to, like, unlock the players or unlock the team or unlock the potential, stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of work for me. That's another reason why I'm really excited, is this is going to be the hardest I'll have to work in a coaching position to get all this team to work together and kind of make it the way that I think it should be.
Now, of course, this first challenge you have so fresh in your role is Cloud9, but there are also, changes across the board there. What do you think about their roster changes?
I think they got probably like the best jungler that they could get, and especially in NA, and even, he's probably going to end up being a world-class jungler, so I think the roster changes are panning out pretty well. We'll have to see how high on support is. Theoretically, it does sound like a really good thing, like on paper. However, like the mechanical aspect and kind of like the general game knowledge of what a support should do in the game is different, because obviously game knowledge doesn't always translate to in-game play. So High might have knowledge, it's just depending on how well he's actually execute it. You calm down.
They're getting excited here, as I'm sure you are. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to have a talk and be so honest. Of course, for the moment, we're gonna head right back over to the Chobra Commander, because I'm sure he's gonna want to dissect that. It's getting hot and heavy in here. We'll see you in a second. Thank you again.
There we have it. So, of course, Prawley seeming to really look forward to the new roster he has to work with. And also, I like the fact that he mentioned that it's probably going to be the biggest challenge he's had, because it's more about individual strengths now rather than just bringing up a team as all 5 in one. Now you're going to have to say, all right, well, Forgiven's good at this. Let's highlight that for Forgiven, but how do I balance that around the other teams? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can even reach that same level of success, because sometimes it goes the other ways. Sometimes you just have too many individual skills, and it's hard to bring that all together in one cohesive unit.
I think Prawley actually also brought up another key point when he targeted High. So we kind of talked about how game knowledge doesn't necessarily transfer to execution. It's almost a double-edged sword that he is in the support position. I mean, obviously you make the assumption that from the support it should be easier to shot caller, but at the same time you don't have nearly enough impact over the map as you do as a mid laner. So the fact that High actually loses a lot of his ability to impact the game directly from the mid laner being moved into support, even though it offers him more room to make decisive calls, really interested on how he's going to take to that dynamic as well as his champion pool.
Okay. And previously we had talked a little bit about just kind of maybe how now it's support jungle. Like, that's the important duo that you have to look at now. How do you rate that? Like, High and Rush, I mean, before Lemon and High, they were a good duo even before that was necessarily the main focus.
I mean, I think High is just giving Rush the brain to like use everything with his mechanics and telling you have to go there and there and there, maybe. we see how that works out. Like, I'm really excited to see if they actually can narrow it down and like do stuff together. That's like the most important thing what they have to do.
Yeah, rather than maybe Rush going off and
Rush is
doing
just
everything
going-
on his own, which can go both ways. Anytime any jungler tries to do that, sometimes you make miracles happen. You like an absolute superstar, but sometimes all the blame falls on you. That's nowhere you want to be. Overall, the fans seeming to vote for Cloud9, and I think that's to be expected. Sure, you have roster changes on both sides, but you still have the familiar face of High, and you still have that faith in him and the faith in the mechanic skills of Rush, and the rest of the team, of course, remain the same for Cloud9. So no big surprise there in terms of results.
I just think that the practice time is the most important factor here. They practice for an entire month. They know what, like, if they did their homework, they know what picks are really good. I don't think we're gonna see like a lot of different champions here compared to the first game where QG played against Dignitas. I think they have their meta figured out. Like, C9 was always a team that knew how to draft. They always knew what to do, and I think that's why this thing where we have to see what they do in champion selection right now.
I feel like with that in mind, bouncing off your point, the fact that H2k hasn't gotten a lot of practice, you can kind of assume that the decision-making mid to late game where everything is revolving around 5 is going to be weaker. With that in mind, I feel like this game is going to be all about H2k splitting up, making it all about individuality, while C9 want to group up, simply because of balls versus Odoamne. I heavily favor Odoamne. High and Sneaky versus Vander and Forgiven, I heavily favor Vander Forgiven. But the decision-making later on, heavily favors C9.
All right. Now, what about in the mid lane then? I mean, I see one player on H2K that really hasn't been mentioned at all is Ryu. And of course, you know, it has been a little while since his glory days back in Korea, but where does he stand in this whole equation? I mean, is he kind of just forgotten?
I think,
Really?
I mean, is he forgotten? I don't know. I don't think so, but I think the matchup heavies, like, Jensen's a very good player. He showed at Worlds how good he is. He has like really good mechanics. He needed a split to adjust from solo queue to competitive play. But when he finally got like comfortable, I think it's like a really big tournament for him too. Like, he showed like moments of brilliance at Worlds, but I think right now at this tournament he can really prove himself to be that promised like solo queue talent that is actually gonna raise up to like gonna set up like next level, right?
Okay.
And that's really the big thing right now. You look at Ryu, you look at Forgiven, the 2 carries for H2K, and it's kind of, I mean, put up or shut up. At this point, you're flanked by incredible talent in pretty much every single lane. You don't have, I mean, from Lolex to Jankos, it's a huge upgrade, so Ryu should be able to perform here. And frankly, you know, when I look down H2K's roster and you kind of have to figure out, you know, where's this weak link? I actually look at Ryu, which I think says to how strong H2K really are. That the fact that I'm even considering Ryu as a weak link, you know, the other Zed player, is absolutely absurd because he's by no means a bad player. It's just that's how much talent is stacked on H2K. And it's now, have they ramped up to their competitive ceiling or are they still showing some growing pains?
I actually completely agree with the fact that Ryu, I don't think the gap is far, but I agree that Ryu is probably the weakest link. But the beauty of this is the fact that the biggest reason why we're not talking about mid lane that much is because it's so heavily affected by the bot lane and the top lane.
Okay.
Because everything is centered around these side lanes. Mid lane is most likely becoming a farm fiesta, as we've seen throughout the season.
Yeah, fair enough. And we do see Ball sporting the good old, now classic Cloud9 tank tops. He's bringing it in. Of course, they debuted that in the studio over in the summer when it was one of the hottest days in Germany with this Cloud9 CSGO team. But we are here now with the picks and bans. And a Nidalee ban coming out over from H2K. Not something we were really expecting too much.
Rush is a player. He played Nidalee and Lee Sin exclusively in solo queue. He doesn't play anything else. So everyone who played against Rush or saw him play those champions, those are like by far his best champions.
Right.
So basically, H2K are obviously aiming for the Elise first pick. Jankos very prominent on Elise. We've talked about how important the jungle matchup is. And if Cloud9 decide to ban of course, the Elise now, then there's so many
Lulu,
strong
Mundo.
champions in the pool.
I mean, you get triple banned with a potential 4th pick being first picked. That's how good Rush, like, that's how, like, the impact he has already in that pick and ban is like huge. If you outban like a player like that, you have to be scared of him, like, for sure. What else is there open? Like, I mean, he can play Rek'Sai probably into Elise. Elise should be first picked here. Okay, Trundle.
Okay.
Trundle is like a good pick too. It's like flex pick, we have talked about it.
Right.
But why would you triple ban like a jungle and then give Elise over to Cloud9?
It makes very, very little sense.
I mean,
do you think they're
if he
banking on the
picks
fact that he doesn't?
Elise?
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't even pick Elise.
I'm kind of hoping he picks Elise, obviously. But to be fair, what I like about C9's side is the fact that they didn't ban all the broken champions. They banned the Thresh as a target ban. It leaves a lot of leeway for the first pick to get a good first pick as well for yourself on the red side.
Mundo.
Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of what you guys talked about is the credit to C9 is that they probably have things figured out now on how to navigate the picks and bans, how to navigate that vision in the game, and maybe that's what we're already seeing here is that they're saying, okay, you ban rush out, we'll kind of find our way around it.
I really like the Lucian first pick. It's like forgiven, you know. It's forgiven.
That's true.
It's the Lucian master, right?
Yeah.
You just take the Lucian away from him if
The
you don't
only
want to
reason,
ban it.
the only reason you pick Lucian is just to pick it away. That's all it does. And
Well,
then Mundo,
likewise, he can't really feed into Misfortune just because Trundle offers a really good disruption to Misfortune because he has
That's
the
true.
pillar, so
That's very
can't get the bullet time off, so it makes perfect sense that he go immediately into Lucian.
Yeah. Mundo, of course, flex pick here. I'm pretty sure that Balls plays his top lane too.
Right.
So maybe Elise pick right now from H2k. That doesn't make any sense to not pick it.
Yeah. Elise and AD carry, bam. Makes a lot of sense. Hide all your cards, force C9 to reveal something that makes sure that your lineup gets a good matchup somewhere, because right now they need to reveal either their full bot lane matchup or their top lane.
Okay, choosing to go for the Rek'Sai though over the Elise, I mean, how do you feel about that? Is that a bit of a gamble, considering that Mundo can still...
What you kind of do right now is you pick the support and can blind pick a mid laner here if you want to hide the Mundo still and want to see where the Trundle is going.
Okay.
But maybe they put like more weight on Jensen having a counter matchup. I'm not sure about that one. What do you do right now? Maybe Victor here or something?
I think definitely you need to blind pick the mid lane right here.
You need to blind pick,
like you can pick. It's like we haven't talked about Rise at all. Rise is open. It's like going for the flex completely makes sense as well, but Shen is not something I expected.
I would have picked Rise. Rise would have made a lot of sense simply because it's a triple flex possibility here. And yeah, Shen and Alistar locks it up pretty much, the bot lane and the top lane.
And that leaves H2k with the choice of picking up Rise. Rise is super powerful. Very surprising that C9 didn't opt in for it here.
I mean, you talked about how you thought that the tank top laners were going to come back. Obviously, I didn't expect the Shen to really come out this tournament, but the tank items, obviously, because the changes away from Last Whisper being much weaker. That said, you do have Trundle, and the big thing about Trundle is he does offer pretty much a free Last Whisper when he uses his Subjugate.
Pretty much. A good Last Whisper.
A good Last Whisper.
Not the one that he made. For sure.
So H2k, I mean, it seems like so far from just their highlights alone is that they are eventually going to put that Trundle over in the bottom. They're just trying to decide what to fill that top lane with.
Okay, so my question was, when you look from Rek'Sai or from Elise to Rek'Sai, I'm like, okay, I think Rek'Sai has a bit more angles onto the mid lane. Elise does too, and there's a lot of kill pressure there as well, but I'm like, okay, they possibly want to set up Ryu there to have a kill lane. And a Nivea level 2, especially if he commits on this Ignite with like a Rek'Sai Unburrow, that burst damage, just the flat base damage is absolutely absurd.
I think we have to look at the bigger picture here. If we see that team comp, Trundle and Anivia, the synergy between those two champions is actually insane. Put in the Trist, you have like a siege comp. This is something that C9 would have played at Worlds, I think, this team composition. And it sets like a very good tone of the game, where it's like, you group up with the 4 people, have the Fiora split push, and then you just siege down towers. There's nothing you can do. It's like Anivia wall into Trundle pillar, and then you have your Tristana hit the towers, which is like the game plan for H2k. So what we have to see is how's Cloud9 gonna answer that? What are they gonna do against it? They need hard engage. They need to engage when they actually siege down the towers.
They definitely have that.
I feel like if anything, if they pick up the Castellan right here, it has very good synergy with, of course, the Shen. And with that in mind, it's like if they pick it up, they can counter the split push. That is going to be the win condition for H2k eventually.
I really like that here. It's like we have double TP maybe. I mean, maybe even goes for Ignite for like a kill lane or something. But I really like the Castellan here. It's like you can maneuver around the pillar, around the wall from Anivia, and you have backline pressure, which is what you need. You need to be able to engage, flank them when they set up for the siege.
I'm really glad that you brought up flank. It's so important for H2k this game that they set up their blue trinkets for flanking vision, because that's pretty much Cloud9's like exact win condition. They have to get the flank, they have to make the engage when they set up a siege like that.
Yep. I would very much likely prefer the TP on the Castellan, because in the early game he's going to be heavily pressured by the Anivia and the Rek'Sai, so I'm pretty scared there.
Yeah, well, trying to go for a little bit more kill pressure in his own lane, it seems. We'll find out as we jump into game number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a best of 3 between Cloud9 and H2k. Who's going to get the lead? We'll find out right after this short break.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Intel Extreme Masters Cologne. I'm Devin Pyrotechnics Young, joined, of course, by the fabulous Christopher Papa Smithy Smith. Excited for this Battle of the Atlantic, Part 2?
Pyra, this is a massive game. There's so many talking points. Just while we were watching the analyst desk, we were just uncovering so many new things to talk about. We'll obviously get into it soon, but man, this is a battle of the Titans, maybe even future Titans, because of course H2k especially, still a very new lineup, but this is going to be a spicy one.
Quite possibly. H2k, I mean, this is a team I'm so excited to see with all this talent being thrown together. We were talking a little bit about a lot of the things that they have versus what Cloud9 has, and there's almost a little bit of mix and match. You've got a lot of familiarity on one side, not so much the other. However, H2k have got something in their pocket with that jungle support synergy.
I mean, support jungle has kind of become a meme after Danny and Mata went to China, right? Everyone was talking about support jungle after Season 4 Worlds, and then we saw China import the duo, but kind of miss out on one key facet, right? They came in as this great warding communication duo, but they came into a lineup where they couldn't really use that because they didn't speak the communal language. Now you have basically an EU flavor of swap here. You bring in Rockat's aggressive jungler, aggressive warding duo of Vander and Yankos, and theoretically, you're plugging and playing a very strong duo. Still two new names to the roster, but a duo that works well together in a meta that suits support jungle extremely strongly.
Absolutely, and you know, you can see it even in the picks and bans. They demand that respect. Obviously, on the side of Cloud9, they were focusing some bans, but for H2k, they were getting the Thresh band away. I mean, Vander is one of those guys that you have to really watch out for. He's not only great at getting the vision down, but really setting up plays. And when he's got Forgiven for an AD carry, you have to be afraid.
And that's the great thing that you pointed out, the bans, right? You come back to bans. Let's look at Forgiven's previous teams. How many times did we talk about 2, 3 bans against Forgiven? And that was because he was always the superstar in a lineup that kind of had a good supporting cast, but never an all-star supporting cast. It was always a viable strategy to hold down Forgiven and then win the game. But now you look at the supporting cast he has. He has the likes of Odo Amne. He has the likes of Ryu. He has strong supporting cast. Now you can't afford to ban 3 Forgiven champions. And this has to be this guy's time to shine.
It absolutely does, but the big question mark has got to be Forgiven, since we haven't seen him for 3-4 months. The last appearance was on Gambit just prior to them facing off in the promotion tournament. And, you know, obviously you can say, oh, maybe he's not quite back to form, but you got to think, if he's been planning this from the beginning, there's no way he's not going to keep himself in top shape.
He's such an impressive mechanical player. Just going onto YouTube, seeing some of the highlights of his recent solo queue games, this guy hasn't lost a beat. He's been away, as you mentioned, but, you know, they say that the oldest adage is that form is temporary and class is permanent. And Forgiven is class to a T. He is one of the strongest Western AD carries in the world. And guess what? He's got quite the foil today because Sneaky, he's right up there as well.
That's very true, and it's kind of almost a mix and match of their two champions, because you've got Sneaky sitting on the Lucian, which was kind of Forgiven's very much signature champ, and at the same time, I would say that Sneaky was a bit more going towards the Tristana, although, you know, I guess if you talk signature champs, you think maybe Corki, but it's not the right meta, not the right time.
And just coming back to Cloud9, because of course we've been focusing on H2k, we're talking about support jungle. We've got this really interesting new support jungle duo for Cloud9, Rush and High. So High moves to the support position. Theoretically, he can just plug and play there. He still has the great shot calling. You bring in the summer season MVP in Rush, a wonderful, aggressive jungler with the mindset, with the shot calling of High. The potential for that is incredible. This lineup's been scrimming for a month. Is it already going to be on display here at IEM Cologne? It's hard to say, but it's just mouth-watering thinking about the possibilities of Rush controlling the early game and the High's trademark shot calling, carrying them into late.
Absolutely. That's the one remaining question for this Cloud9 squad. I guess apart from the fact that perhaps we have to see how they're affected by not having Lemonation in the game itself, just in the coaching position instead. Just a quick update for you guys that are watching at home. We do have a quick pause because of an audio issue. It should be resolved soon, but it does give us a little bit of time to kind of hash over what we expect to see, and a lovely audience members getting ready. Some cosplay actually today. But back into the game. For Cloud9, again, they have everything on paper. They've got a fantastic jungler that has proven himself getting the MVP in summer when he was with Team Impulse. H2k have really only been playing together for a couple of days. You heard it from Prawley, 2 days worth of scrims. I mean, this is against a team that is known for having, throughout their history, the best, the smartest teamwork in the western half of the world, pretty much.
And look, if H2k don't win this series, I don't think that can be a big black mark next, and there has to be an asterisk, just because, again, as you mentioned, 2 days of scrims, with such strong identities, with just multiple carries, it's going to be really hard to expect them to have everything together for this series compared to Cloud9, who made the drastic step of saying, hi, you can't go to All-Stars. We want to stay and scrim for longer. They've been scrimming for roughly 4 weeks already. This should be a team in tip-top shape, which is why the picks and bans are kind of enigmatic to me. Okay, we see the return of the tank top. That's not the surprising factor. The fact that it's Shen, that's a little bit surprising to me. I've been more commonly a support recently than a top lane champion, but they were kind of forced into this Cassidy last pick. It is a good lane matchup against Anivia, of course. The fact that Null Sphere is an interrupt means that it just takes away some of the best, takes away some of the reliable wave clear. The big factor I take away from this champ select, though, is that they've got 2 permanent types of terrain. I'm talking about the wall from Anivia and, of course, the pillar of ice from Trundle, against 4 melee champions. Of course, one of the best ways to deal with melee champions is that wall from Anivia. So they have a lot of answers. We're going to see it on the Rift very soon.
We will indeed. So after we have had a little bit of a false start, we're heading on to the Rift for both these teams, H2k and Cloud9, loaded on up. Blue side, of course, for H2k to start off game number 1. In this best of 3 series, though, you know, it should be all about the momentum. If H2k take this one early on, I feel like that kind of sends the signal that, hey, you know, these stars are going to beat the Brainiacs of Cloud9. But on the other hand, Cloud9 don't have as many questions. They should look comfortable together. I guess we just have to find out as the game unfolds out.
So the question of lane swaps will be a regular one during this tournament. Of course, we're very new. This is the first top-level international event on the preseason patch. And what do you see? You see 5-point defenses. You shouldn't be surprised how many metas have passed where the jungle has changed or big factors come in. What do you see immediately? 5-point defense. But we all know, I think, we won't see this earlier, Rush is actually aggressively invading.
Yeah, it looks for a couple of cleavers onto Forgiven, and that means he might have to back away a little early, pinging around the wards. They do spot that as Odoamne goes deep, finds Balls and Jensen in the jungle. He's going to back away too. So just kind of poking and feeling each other out, but no full-on aggression to begin this one. As you said, it's a new patch. It's a bit uncertain. Even though Cloud9's been scrimming for a lot longer than H2k for this particular event, they've got to play this one out a little safely since they've got more than one chance. It's not a best of 1.
So much information is gathered by H2k in this level 1. Look what they had. They had the defensive vision. Okay, they took a bit of damage on Forgiven, but of course, not a big factor. They've got aggressive and defensive vision. This is not something we expected you could get on patch 523. This is a patch where, of course, with the 15-second earlier start, it wasn't really expected that you could balance both defensive and offensive vision to get the safe lane swaps that we're expecting. They've done better than expected as we see a mid lane matchup where Jensen not going to enjoy the early levels. Is that the harassment, the ranged versus melee matchup is going to be pretty pragmatic for the first 3 levels or so.
Yeah, just like they said on the desk, I mean, this is such a rough early game for Cassidy, but if he can get later on into the game, he shouldn't have too much trouble to really sidestep all the terrain to get through and maybe get some pickups. We saw what a Fed Cassidy could do in the last series, and we might just see it again, but Ryu is keen on shutting that one down.
Tracking here, of course, the lane swap has been initiated. It's the same lane swap style that we've seen many times over. Shen has found so little experience. He's sitting on 0 experience gain at 2 minutes 25. He's going to come and help eventually the fast push, but man, no experience at all. Just now pinging his first bit of experience.
Yeah, but you've got 4 members of H2k on the top side as Jensen gets even more damage, but Rush comes in to try and force Ryu away, gets the flash out of him. Still, this should be H2k's push. They got there a little bit sooner. They were able to freeze the wave out and force Balls from getting any experience early on since he was just roaming around. It's close to not even, but I feel like H2k are the ones taking the incentive here and forcing it early on.
I mean, they got the vision. They also have the Tristana, so you'd expect them to set the pace when it comes to taking turrets. If they want to take it instantly, they have that potential with the Tristana. If they want to be a bit more safe with their movement, and they can do that as well, but waiting to see if we see the true bounce. Of course, we're waiting to see if the minions bounce back. Who will get the last hit on the turret? Will it be Forgiven? Will it be Odoamne? Still favoring the top laner with that.
Yeah, give it over to Odo. However, Cloud9, he'll not get the full push on. They decide to bounce back a little bit themselves, so everything's fairly even in the start of this game. But it doesn't seem to be H2k's plan to really need to go super heavy, super quick. There's not a lot of late game damage outside of this mid lane. Sneaky's Lucian won't scale particularly well, and he's not faced up in a favorable lane matchup since they did the swap. Sneaky and High will go top, however, but they'll be dealing with Odoamne now.
You might be surprised to see a lane swap be initiated when you have the Anivia versus Cassidy matchup. Most players will know that Cassidy eventually finds himself in a great spot in this lane, but early, because it's that melee versus range, because you can just do some consistent harassment with just the auto attacks, this is the sort of lane matchup where Frogger might even pick up AD runes, just be more of a harasser on the Anivia. You can do a lot of interesting things. High is looking for a roam. Won't get anything, but you're happy to have this lane isolated early. It's only later, post level 6, where things start to get a little bit hairy for Ryu on the Anivia.
Well, and speaking of a little bit hairy, too, I mean, I feel like when these teams do finally go at each other, it's going to be really, really intense. They're both, I would say, a little bit more conservative than the teams we saw in the last matchup. More so Cloud9. I mean, these guys don't really take unnecessary risks, but the real question mark is how is Rush going to change this? He's obviously not an incredibly aggressive jungler, but one that we really expected to see. And he's getting his counter jungle on, but Jankos is kind of looking to push on the bottom side as well. So it just kind of keeps trading back and forth, and we've got this game of chess going where if somebody doesn't back off, they trade even.
And for now, even is fine. Remember, this is the patch where minion wave changes have come into effect, but they only really start to affect the game when there is multiple turret advantages in mirror lanes. We're going to see both outer turrets down in both the top lane and the bottom lane. So the minion waves are going to be equalized. We can still see the deep freezes that we've been expecting. We're not really seeing the new patch flavor just yet.
No, and you know, that won't happen necessarily for a time when you've got people that are playing on it new. This is our first really big look at the 5.23 patch, and it's still going to be a while before, you know, that full preseason comes into effect. So still trading turrets back and forth, but Cloud9 couldn't quite finish it. I mean, that's gold almost in the bank, but they've got 3 members up on the top. They're both displacements used, and Jensen just narrowly escapes, but he's almost got 6 at this point, and they haven't totally shut him down. They have kept him down on farm, however.
And even though we talked about 4 melee champions, you know, Castellan's effectively not really considered in that ball just because he has that reposition. Of course, the wall not going to be so effective against the Castellan. It's just what are Shen and Mundo going to be able to accomplish when their movement is going to be so held down by both the slow and the wall, you know, preventing them from either engaging or disengaging as they look to do.
Yeah, it's so difficult because if you get this team running at you, it's easy enough to disengage. You maybe need to spend Ball's teleport or his ultimate just to be able to bring 2 or 3 people to the fight. Speaking of Balls, though, he could be in some trouble as Forgiven jumps forward. He is so aggressive, but he's got Jankos in his back pocket as the knockup and the pillar comes in. Balls is going to be first-blooded, and it goes over to Forgiven.
And the roam from Vander confirmed the kill. Of course, you saw that Jankos was holding on to the flash. He could have flashed over. Shen was just hoping that he would use the unburrow, make it. He had nowhere to run. He didn't even have a turret to get back to. Very nice pathing coming from the Jankos. What do you expect from him as a jungler? And Rush being forced onto the Mundo. This is the result you get. It's the kind of pace you expect from Rush. Has not happened this game.
Yeah, and they're hanging around up in the top side, too, to help protect Forgiven in case he runs into a bit of trouble as Jensen is looking to cause Rush at his back as well. Forgiven asking for help up there, but, I mean, they should be able to keep the push on. It's Tristana we're talking about.
These inner turrets are the big benefactors with the preseason changes. And by the benefactors, of course, are the ones going on top of them because...
He got the taunt. He's going to have to get a short-range jump up here, but in comes High and Rush. It's a 3-on-3 in the top lane, but everyone's going to back away from that. Forgiven took a little bit of damage, but he was safe enough, as now Jensen is standing right in the Anivia ult, has to riff walk away. They trade even in the mid lane. Still just feeling each other out, though.
And Cloud9 have to be the more conservative team when it comes to these engages up top. Remember, Ryu has teleport, and Jensen on Kassadin does not.
No, he does not. Ryu, keep that in his back pocket for now, though. Still just sitting on his Catalyst, looking to build that up into the Rod of Ages. Anivia has just come out as a incredibly popular pick in the few events we've seen so far. And Jensen's just got to be careful. The shards are starting to hurt.
Just think about this champion. Anivia's been slept on for a long time. Had a lot of bad matchups, Kassadin included, for a long time. High and Rush are really looking to get on top of Ryu. Does have flash back up already, though. Big thing for Anivia, things like the Thunderlord's Mastery, giving her that a little bit of extra burst. Ignite, if you take it, it means that when you hit that big combo on Anivia, you're getting much closer to getting instant kills rather than just chunking down the enemy.
Yeah, it almost kind of plays like an assassin in that way, but just one that comes in a much more feathered package, I would say.
How many champions with high burst also have such reliable wave clear like Anivia? It's almost like a safer Lux in that kind of way.
Well, you've got a lot of safety tools, too. You've got the disengage for the wall. You can also use it for catching. And then there's also your passive. I mean, if you kill Anivia once, you have to kill her twice.
It's a very important point. Builds into Rod of Ages, which has seen quite a lot of power this patch, giving it that extra flat ability power and still scaling in the same way. It's a more efficient rush, and then of course after 10 minutes you get that same efficiency that you'd expect. It does mean, of course, that we're seeing less spooky ghosts. We haven't seen the Frost Queens claim as much as we expect this tournament, but still plenty of time for that to change.
I mean, Lulu's been banned out all the time too. I'm sure that'll change sooner or later. Someone's got to slip up, and I can't wait for the moment to happen. But for now, though, again, it's just going to continue to be a farm fest as Cloud9 are content to kind of leave things as they are. They're able to clear the waves out. And, you know, this is a team that shouldn't have any trouble rotating against H2k. Obviously, Dragon is way less important, so they don't need to play towards the bottom side of this map for the time being. They can just keep it in the lane. H2k, on the other hand, they're looking to push wherever they can with Forgiven. They want to shove things fast, and this is exactly what Forgiven did in his heyday on SK Gaming. He just shoved waves incredibly hard, incredibly fast, and tried to force enemy teams back so that they wouldn't be able to farm, so that they would be kept on the back foot. Constant aggression. That's the name of the game.
You can see it from his item build. He's got the double daggers already. They're just looking to push, and this is a Forgiven special. While he's known as a high-pressure laner, it was more about taking that turret early, and that allowing waves to bounce. Oh, it's Jensen.
Oh, he's caught right between the cone and the wall, and he's taken a lot of damage, but Forgiven is the one who's actually caught up and ignited. He's going to get almost blown up to pieces. The ignite is still ticking, and Jensen picks him off. Rush now is targeted out, but he's just got so much health as the Mundo, and the Shen's going to come in on Jensen. Another teleport. Odoamne looking to continue the fight as Jankos dodge left to go avoid the cleaver. Exhaust is on. Another pillar, but now it's going to be Vander bailing out. He's got not enough health, and a massive ultimate out of Sneaky will mean they're forced away, but it's only going to be Forgiven going down, or is it? Yep, Odoamne's out.
Yeah, Forgiven was just baited by just a wonderful combination of the wall and the traffic cone, of course, the pillar of ice. They just couldn't quite get the kill on the Kasten and then just took the extra turret shots. Nice re-engage by Cloud9. They could even use the Shen to continue the aggression. Because Jensen had flashed defensively, the Shen couldn't get into a wonderful spot for a taunt, but the result is still a one trade for Cloud9.
Yeah. Waiting to make the play and counterplaying just perfectly.
You know, it's a preseason patch where we have a super bloody game one of our first series, and now we're back to the more controlled style of League of Legends, okay? Bit of a head explosion for Forgiven there, but otherwise, we're going to see a return to this push mid. Cost them a kill just a moment ago, but they're going to get this turret, and this is the power of Tristana, and it's why the EU teams are still favoring this champion on 523.
Well, and to me, Tristana always feels like the AD carry version of Jackson, that you can get shut down super hard. But once you reach a certain point in the game, since you're going to be able to farm, you're just going to be massive. You're going to wreck towers. You can completely fail your laning phase, not that Forgiven ever does, and still be completely relevant.
I mean, speaking about Forgiven's laning phase, big difference. Of course, it was a lane swap, but the result, 28 CS behind. But he's being the team player. He's rotating, he's looking for those structures, and so far, it's being successful. And what's a Kassadin to do? This doesn't have the wave clear, and they're taking advantage of this super low wave clear. What wave clear does Cloud9 have? They literally only have Lucian, you know, mostly the culling to really instant clear a wave.
Exactly, and you know, I mean, that's on a low enough cooldown when you think about it compared to a lot of other AD carry ultimates, but it's just not going to be enough come these late games, and I fear for Cloud9, if H2k just maintains a lead, even if it's slight, right now it's only a couple hundred gold, if they can keep pushing out and gaining more territory, winning the war of attrition, they can shove Cloud9 out all the way to the fountain.
I mean, let's talk about a scenario here. Let's talk about H2k picking out Baron. Suddenly, the culling doesn't really deal with the minions. Suddenly, 4 melee champions are going to be walking up to try to defend a turret against Anivia Trundle. H2k picking out Baron should seal them out this game, so it will be a big objective for them to look at soon.
Okay, Vander providing a little bit of support here as we go right back into this one. Juked for just a second on the camera. Odoamne is going to go in and go out for the 2v3 defense of the tower. So far, not too bad. Sneaky takes a little bit of damage from the Fiora. And in comes Jankos. That will signal the end of this push for now. Or is it because Vander steps forward? Fiora goes in, looks for the big knockup with the Rek'Sai, and Jankos is making this one happen. A double kill goes to Odoamne. He's in a bit of trouble now, but they still manage to land the knockup. They're just bobbing and weaving left and right. Lucian will finally shut the Fiora down, and it's still a 3v2, or a 3v3, I should say, in the bottom lane. Only one kill taken on H2k's side, or taken by H2k rather, and that means Forgiven's going to continue to free push up in the top.
I got a nice engagement, was still level 5, didn't have the Unbreakable Wall 13 minutes into the game, and the key factor is that a delayed 5v5 leads an equal kill trade, but certainly not an equal objective trade as Forgiven casually takes an inner turret.
Yeah, and look at how much Cloud9 invested in this bottom side. They lose the trade. They put so much vision down on this bottom to try and take the tower, but then they lose their one up top. High is a little slow to react here, just trying to chase Forgiven away, but now they have to deal with this wave in the top side. Sure, they can see the movements on the bottom side of the map, but they're in no position to react. If H2k wanted a Dragon right now, they probably could take it, but it's not as valuable as it used to be.
This is the second time we've seen Kassadin in this tournament, but there was a bit more of a reprieve for Xiaogu when they took Kassadin previously, and they ran Teleport Kassadin. Of course, Kassadin could always enable a 1-3-1. Jensen not picking up Teleport this game on the Kassadin takes away the kind of surprise factor of having a 1-through-1. The flanks are so much harder when you have to potentially use your Rift Walk just for mobility. And so the surprise engage that honestly Kasten desperately needs to pull off when we get into the later stages, when we already mentioned that it's not really going to be reliable for Cloud9 to have any sort of wave clear, is so much harder. It's such hard execution for Jensen, and he hasn't got any kills with that Ignite.
No, he hasn't indeed. And now Odoamne is looking to chase him down as his Rift Walk was still waiting to come back up. They take it out. C9 will secure themselves a Dragon on the backside of that as well, so they do trade something for the life of Jensen, but Rush might be the next to go. Jukes and flashes away, but H2k are on the chase. Odoamne and Vander continue it up, but they'll be content with a pair of flashes, and now they look to secure some more things in the jungle.
Whenever Ryu is together with Vander, these melee champions have to run in all directions because of the wall and just the permanent terrain. Double terrain is ridiculous, and we haven't seen Trundle and Anivia on the same team in competitive, maybe ever, but it's really proving effective here.
Yeah, continuing to just keep Sneaky and High away with the pillar, with the wall. Even the Cologne can't stop this now. It's going to be another tower taken. That's 5 in 15 minutes for H2k. They are just absolutely wrecking down the structures of Cloud9.
Doesn't look like it's going to get any better for Cloud9. You don't really look at this team. If they had the teleport cast, and you could say, all right, 1-3-1, get that big flank, get on top of the Anivia, burst her down, okay, maybe you can win a fight. But just with the texture of what they've chosen, it's so difficult for them to be relevant. With 2 turrets down in the top lane, we're going to see these minions finally powered up. Shen slowly going to be clearing them. So ult-reliant is he going to be. Cloud9 actually finds some free time to go on to the Rift Herald, and just because of the back timers, it should be uncontested.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem here. And it was going to be spotted by H2k because of their Scuttle Crab vision, but still, High is going to go ahead and pick that up. They will have a little bit of a mini Baron buff to be able to push in whichever lane they choose. It probably should be bottom, though, because look what Forgiven's doing right now, leading a whole herd of minions up to that next tower.
Forgiven has just not been interested in any sort of 2v2 lane. The Forgiven versus Sneaky dream match, it just hasn't happened because Forgiven has set his sights on turrets, and man, has he been knocking them down.
Yeah, already at lower than half health, nearly down to a third, but he bails out as soon as he sees Sneaky and High coming. Tristana can split push, folks, and he manages to get some serious damage out on that one, get out just fine. H2k are playing the structure game. They don't need to get kills when they can keep knocking down the towers.
Yeah, flat attack damage into the Berserker Greaves. That was, of course, the Jinx way. It was always about BF Sword, pickaxe into Berserker Greaves, and it's the same flavor with the Tristana rapid fire cannon. Again, means that that first hit onto a turret, the first hit onto an enemy is from that safer range. Completely turret destruction coming through from this Tristana, and it's so effective against this melee lineup that Cloud9's put together. With all this hype, with all this time to practice, this draft from Cloud9 is a real head-scratcher.
Yeah, well, the really issue for them right now is what do they do to get back into this one? I feel like they have to force a fight, but they're still playing back. They're still playing defensively. Now they're using High to push with the Herald buff, but look at that. One well-placed pillar, and he just backs off.
And Balls has to back away. He's a level behind Odoamne, and look, Fiora does have kill pressure onto Ashen, even though he's gone for the more tanky route. He hasn't gone for the Ravenous Hydra. Of course, Hydra and Titanic Hydra can just be swapped for free, so Freely could have done that. Usually you'd see the Ravenous Hydra early and then swapping into the Titanic Hydra to scale with health items, but for now, Fiora putting so much pressure on the top. Unless he's getting taunted under turret, he's going to freely be able to push. Even with all the armor stacking coming through, of course, the percentage true damage does come through from Fiora as well, so she will do a very deft hand in pushing against Shen and pushing across the map, and these melee champions doing their best just to stay relevant as here comes High.
Oh, and Forgiven just going to flash on forward. There's an instant exhaust. High will go ahead and get the headbutt and the pulverize on, and Forgiven might be down as he's taunted up. He's going to have to keep on running, burned all his aggressive stuff, and that is Sneaky picking up the kill on him, but a good collapse from Cloud9. Very aggressive movements by Forgiven, and this time it bites him in the behind.
It's over-aggression, but of course nothing will change. Fiora will keep pushing, and Shen has to instantly react and go back top, so the numbers disadvantage won't exist for very long. Rush pulls the ult, looking for another fight.
Yeah, he wants to find somebody, but Jankos is just going to tunnel out and away. There's a teleport coming in for Balls right now. Jankos is almost right on top of him, and at the last second he cancels it. Burned Summoner spell. Odoamne, after pushing in the top side, continues to come back to mid. Bails out as he sees Jensen and Rush on his tail. High and Sneaky are trying to come and force them back as well, but it just seems like H2k is running the show.
And that's the thing. Cloud9 get the important pick. Active over-aggression from Forgiven. Get that pick. What do they translate it to? Nothing. There's no way for them to relieve pressure when Fiora is going to have this pushing advantage against Shen. When Tristana's just happy to just walk up, hit turrets, and has so much disengage with both the ultimate and the rocket jump. This game is being played completely at the pace of H2k. the fact that the gold difference isn't that big gives Cloud9 a bit of hope. Some sort of big fight over Baron, because remember we mentioned Baron for H2k, that's probably enough to break the base and seal the game. But a team fight, that's what they're desperately looking for from Cloud9. And H2k, the one objective they'll grant such a fight is around the Baron.
They have to know, they have to keep the vision secured there for them to be able to contest it. So they are playing towards the top side of the map, and Baron's only going to be about a minute away, but it's so early for them to try and contest it. H2k can take all the time they want. They've got scaling on their side. For the most part, they do have the better damage. And it goes back to that champion selection you were saying, Papa. There simply isn't enough damage in this comp, and as long as they keep Jensen down, there'll be none.
The Shen was such a head-scratcher. They had Dr. Mundo here, could have just rotated into a top. Of course, he fits right in the middle of Ball's champion for. They mentioned it on the analyst desk. There's a lot of value in potatoes on this patch, but if you have too many potatoes, the meal's going to be looking a bit carb-heavy, and that's what we see from Cloud9. They've got all the potatoes, but the damage is just a melee range Kassadin and Sneaky, who will struggle to get into range because, again, he has to deal with all that terrain being put up by both Anivia and Trundle.
Yeah, Odoamne is going to find Jensen, and he pops his ultimate. Not enough vitals just hit there. Odoamne's into 3, though. There's the collapse from Cloud9 they're looking for. If they can get the shutdown gold onto Odoamne, there he goes. No shutdown, actually, but a nice big pick.
Odoamne flashes a well. That didn't look like that was necessary. They get the pick, but again, okay, they claim their own blue buff, which is important for Kassadin. They can look towards Dragon, but Dragon's been so heavily deprioritized ever since the changes. It is a first Dragon, so maybe that's actually going to be a second Dragon, which of course almost completely disregarded in this patch. Vander's still looking aggressive onto Sneaky, but I don't think you're going to really pull anything off with Odoamne dead and doesn't have teleport when he respawns.
This is the chance for Cloud9 to get back into this. Small things after they get picks. They can secure another Dragon. Obviously, it's not that important to get number 2, but it's still important if you want to go all the way to number 5. And if this game continues at the pace it is, that could very well happen. We have seen very quick games so far on this patch. However, we're 21 minutes in. We're 4-4 in kills. This is one of the more conservative games I feel we're going to see this weekend.
I mean, the kills have been frags on turrets. It's 5-2 in turrets. Such has been the turret push, and that's, you know, when you talk about the pace of the game, it's being dictated by H2k. Okay, if they get more and more picks, if we're getting a pick every 3-4 minutes, blowing a flash, blowing a teleport, okay, it will buy time for Cloud9 to look for that ever-optimistic 5th Dragon. But 5th Dragon preseason, I mean, before the preseason, that was an optimistic win condition. You know, people would even give up 4 to look to fight for the 5th. In now a day where games go, what, 26 to 30 minutes, maybe 32 minutes, looking for a 5th Dragon is almost just looking up and praying.
Yeah, the Baron is definitely a much more attractive option, especially for H2k right now. They do maintain a couple thousand gold in the lead, but they're still making these small mistakes. They've just got to be a little bit more together and on the same page, but this is the rawness that comes with only having played together for a few days.
Look, they've had a good start. They prioritize turrets and pull that off, but you're right. This is where the meat of the game really comes. If we ever see Odoamne fail a teleport against a Shen with both teleport and ultimate up, then the split push pressure goes down, then the Baron pressure goes down, and then it buys time, because Kassadin, 6 items, is still going to be a massive factor. I think Kassadin is massively strong on this patch with the likes of Thunderlords, with his natural itemization, the things like Abyssal, the things like Rod of Ages still being super effective. Again, they need to buy time, and they might continue to do so here.
Yep, he just goes in deep again, looks for balls, tries the parry, doesn't get it with the help of Rush. Balls will be able to take him out.
It's the 3rd reprieve that H2k has offered Cloud9. That's twice Odoamne, once Forgiven, have given away fairly needless kills. This is the reality of split push, though, with less wards in the game. Remember, Sightstone was nerfed down to 3 wards, with just vision, you know, the permanent vision of pink wards, still a big factor, but green wards, stealth wards removed from the game. These split pushes have been largely ineffective, and now it's Cloud9 actually posturing towards Baron.
Yeah, Rush is going to get caught between Ryu and Jankos for the minute, but he's still Mundo, and he's completely okay with it. Actually starting to chase them down as balls comes in. There's a culling around the side, but it's only going to half land, and High goes in with a flash and the knock-up, looking for Jankos. Ryu is gonna go down here. Sneaky will be able to pick him off on the backside. Gets Jankos as well. Double kill. Staying alive. Completely happy with this one. Vander's forced to run away. And it's Sneaky just kiting backwards from Odoamne. Balls could be in trouble. But it's 4-on-1. A triple kill to the Lucian. They can take the tower, but they want Baron.
And High made a massive play there. Remember, we talked about how many tanks this team lineup has. Between Balls, Rush, so between Shen, Mundo, and Alsa, they can tank turrets for days. Sneaky was free autoing, already has rapid fire cannon and the Essence Reaver, and the fact that they could just disregard the turret meant there were kills aplenty for Cloud9, and suddenly they have been offered a lifeline in this game. We're going to see the replay coming through. Rush could just go back in, and they just don't have the damage to take him down. Only Tristana can realistically do any sort of damage towards the tanky frontline, and Tristana was not grouped at all, so that's why it was a masterful turret dive orchestrated by High. Just watching the results here, Tristana finally joins the fight, but Shen and Mundo are running, and there's nothing that Forgiven can do. I mean, Cloud9, how often do we talk about the fact that they pick their engages perfectly, and High moves to support, still makes a hero engage.
Yeah, so they don't manage to secure or to even start the Baron, really, but they do get a very important thing in securing this vision. We saw until just a moment ago, the theater of vision was pretty much up and down, strung throughout the Cloud9 jungle. Now, it's extended past the river. This war of attrition is starting to go in their favor, and they're going to start it up. Fiora's on the bottom side. No teleport for Odo Omne. The rest of H2k will be here, but it's at worst a 4v5. However, they're caught in the Baron pit, and High is just out of it. Jensen goes forward, looks for Ryu. They're going to flash in. Sneaky will throw down the culling, but he barely manages to clip Ryu on the end, and Jensen will finish him off. Jankos now caught between everybody as Balls is forcing off Vander and Forgiven. Jankos will go down. Sneaky with another massive kill. They're all low on Cloud9, though, and they have to be careful fighting into Forgiven.
We just mentioned that if Odo Omne ever used his teleport, suddenly Baron is so hard to contest, and that's the result there. You saw Forgiven. He found so many armor stacking tanks, there was nothing he can do. Okay, they get them off Baron, but it's such a hard map for H2k to navigate, and there should be another turret to Cloud9.
No problem. Forgiven wasn't there either. He decided to push down the middle, but won't get anything else off of that. They can try to push for the inhib turret here. If Odo Omne and Vander can't defend, Forgiven is back, but they're already on it, and they've got a wave of minions at their back. They can secure this up.
Just rushing down the Baron, but Odo Omne's looking in.
Looks for High. He will be able to take him out. Rush now throws down his own ultimate, but he's going to get caught extremely low. In comes Forgiven. This actually could be a bad wipe, but Cloud9 is turning it around. They managed to take out Forgiven and Vander. A double kill over to Rush, and now the inhibitor is going to be all theirs.
Sneaky largely free autoing, now 7-0-3. He is the carry his team's looking for, and he doesn't have to deal with the tank wall that Cloud9 have put together. Look at this Shen build. Sunfire Cape, Thorn Mail, Warden's Mail. Forgiven. People just run at him. Tanks run at him. 3 tanks on this Cloud9 lineup, and he can't tickle any of them.
They know that all they need to do is wait for him to jump in, go completely ham sandwich on this team, and then they've got him trapped. He's had his flash down for a little while. Forgiven's a guy not afraid to use his tools offensively, but this is not the first time, and nor will it be the last, that it has really, really screwed over H2k.
He's jumping into Shen, Mundo, or Alistair. They have so much. I have a suite of CC. They have so many tank items. Another chain vest sneakily thrown in by Rush. Sneaky. He is free autoing for days, and H2k don't have anywhere near the same front line. Their only front line is Rek'Sai, and Rek'Sai has a locket and a chain vest.
Well, let's go back to the Baron for a minute, because Cloud9 have used it exactly as you said they needed to. They just are forcing H2k to collapse, or at least several members of H2k to collapse, and then they can do what they do best, which is out-team fight them.
And look, we were running down the Cloud9 team comp, and I maintain that, remember how big a lead H2k had. There were multiple turrets up. They were in a wonderful position. Shen couldn't match the Fiora split push. The difference is Odo Omne, then Forgiven, then Odo Omne a second time gave their life, gave more time for Cloud9 to buy those extra giant spells, to buy those extra tank items, and now we get to the team fight phase, which never should have existed. H2k understood that. That's why they were split pushing. In a split push scenario, Cloud9 had no answers, but when the team fight phases started, again, mostly due to H2k making mistakes, Cloud9 suddenly looked great.
Yeah, they swung the gold in their favor, too. It may not look like a lot, but couple that with 3 dragons, the fact that they've caught up almost on par in towers, and they have the inhibitor down in the top lane, which is tying up Odo Omne's time, means that H2k are just going to have trouble getting much done on the map.
They desperately need the Baron that we talked about so many times. Only 27 minutes in. 2 dragons. Maybe that 5th dragon win condition will be a thing. That's the kind of thing we're going to take. Remember, 4 melee champs, we've talked about it multiple times. Not good at defending a push. Not really good at taking turrets either. They brute forced one down in the top lane, but other than that, Ryu might be caught.
Yeah, and Jensen just goes on in. They get the egg Nivea, and they scramble it for breakfast. Jensen with another pickup, 3-2-8 on the Kassadin. Cloud9 can now try to force this Baron dance. They know exactly where Odo Omne is, and with his teleport up, they can force this fight, instantly starting the Baron.
Why is Ryu face checking? That's the question you have to ask there. On the Anivia, very slow champion, so many pick tools for the Kassadin. Baron started in high. He's just on a zoning mission.
Baiting himself into to this team. You might kill me, but we will get the Baron. They can't even chunk half his health, and now Balls has got the taunt onto Jankos. He's trying to get away, but there's a Cassidy at his back, and there will be no escape. Gets the knock-up, so does Jankos, but it doesn't matter. Sneaky comes in to try and finish him off. It goes to Jensen, and that is Cloud9 taking everything away from H2k.
And the Baron would have been the death knell, and Cloud9 now picking it up themselves means they have so much life in this game. They broke that turret first. It is disgusting that H2k, with the objective lead they had, were the first ones to give up an inhibitor, and now it's probably sealed their fate as high. Again, the shot calling comes through. The Alistair, he bought so much time. He stopped Jankos from getting in a position to steal the Baron. And then we have tanks and a Cassidy slowly killing Jankos. But Cloud9, they got the all-important objective, and now they're looking great. And the turrets, they're going to start rolling down, because these turrets, they're still pretty paper thin.
We're also starting to see the power of Mundo coming in here, because no matter what, Rush can pretty much just sit there and be right in front of everybody as Rhea was tanking way too much damage. It's high that went down, but Odo's going to follow. That's a double kill over to Jensen, and all of a sudden, Cloud9 have a 4v3 advantage as they look to push down the tower. Rush just tanks up the turret for days. Mundo truly does go where he pleases, and especially with the Baron buff on, Cloud9 will secure themselves a second inhibitor. They can start pushing for Nexus. Jensen goes in, and he gets himself a Zanya's. Jankos is caught in, Vander as well. Jensen's out. They can stay safe through the rest of this, and could this be the push for win? 30 minutes into this game, Papa Smithy. Cloud9 are not looking healthy, but they do look better than H2k here.
Yeah, you can see it's going to be the finish of the game. The Baron buff minions will cement it. Cloud9, they got multiple reprieves, and this team with a month of scrims in their belt, apparently you can't give them 3 reprieves, because once they started winning, the game looked only one way. Only looked like it was going to go to Cloud9.
And it did indeed. 1-0 on the board. Cloud9 proves that preparation truly trumps talent in this first one, but H2k, they looked great for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, when H2k were the ones setting the pace, they looked like they were going to be able to take the game, but you kind of saw the inexperience of playing together, specifically Odo Amne, twice in almost the exact same fashion, trying to split push with not enough vision and paying for it, and that extra time to buy Mundo, levels, items. That's what got them back in the game.
Not to mention the Cassidy as well. I mean, it really worked out fantastically for Jensen. Even though we had so much pressure on him from Ryu in the early game, the same thing top with Balls. It didn't matter if they couldn't fight 1v1, because all they had to do was force fights after they got a catch.
And again, we return to the criticism of the draft. The likes of the Shen, the likes of the Mundo. It was because when H2k were playing smart, when they were warding and pushing with the Tristana, there was no answer for Cloud9. They were basically hoping to find a way to buy time, to hit those items they realistically should never been able to put together. But Cassidy picks up 3 items, Mundo picks up 3 tank items, and of course some levels, and suddenly they just run at the enemy AD carry with Warden's mail and Thorn mails aplenty, and forgiven. It's nothing you can do.
Absolutely nothing at all. Now, to break that game down a little bit further, we're going to send it back to the expert desk to take a look into it.
Yep, and there we have it. Commentators wrapping it up a little bit for us, but overall, what did you guys think? I mean, one thing I think I want to start off by saying is that towards the end of the pick ban, you guys were a little worried about that teleport not coming in for the Cassidy. Sure, Cloud9 gets the win, but what's the jury, or the verdict rather, on that teleport missing out?
So yeah, the reason why the teleport was so important actually for Cloud9 was Cassidy could never leave the mid lane, and that's not what you want to do. You want to be on the side lane, you want to play the 1-3-1 game with the Shen and Cassidy back, playing off each other's back. Like, that's the strong, Shen and Cassidy, that's like the strong point, when they just can play off each other. People can, like, they can back each other up with a TP or Shen ultimate, and that never happened. Cassidy was basically trapped in the mid lane, but at the same time, H2k never got to use their combo right, how we said, hey, Siege with the Trundle and Anivia with both the spells, and after Tristana hit the towers. Tristana was just like solo pushing the waves and taking the towers, got actually caught twice, and that probably lost them the whole advantage. That Forgiven just overcommitted to those kills, died, and the whole the whole advantage they got was lost at that point. So
it's exactly what we talked about. When H2k when every single player were doing their own thing, it was good. But whenever anything was requiring coordination, everything fell apart. The team fights, the split pushing. In the end, they were getting caught all over the place, and eventually C9 get to do the thing, grouping up, doing things as 5, and playing on the decision making.
How did you view that game, Frost?
I mean, I completely agree. The thing that I really want to underline is kind of Ryu's performance. You know, we talked about it. It may be a controversial statement to say that Ryu is the weakest link of that team, but I think that that game pretty much showcased exactly what I kind of was thinking about. And, you know, the fact that Ryu is the weak link says a lot for how strong H2k are. And again, they don't have a lot of preparation right there, but they look like a team without direction. And if it goes back to what Yamada was talking about, you know, who's going to step up and be the shot caller, the decisive member for that team. If it's Ottawamne, you know, caught out twice, being dead off the map, as Papa Smithy was saying, is quite punishing.
Yeah, and we do have actually replay. Of course, we were talking about it during the game from one of those fights in the mid lane. If we can bring that up and you guys want to run through it again, we got a quick look at it again during the game, but walk us through this.
This basically is it all comes together why this is such a good, why Mundo is so strong and why when C9 groups up, they're superior to like H2k. We can just run the clip right now and see Mundo will not die, and especially with the Shen ultimate, it's really good to get into the fight, but we have to keep our eyes on Hai right now, on the Alistar. Look at what Hai does right now. Everything is set up for him, and then he angers with the W, Q flash, the triple stun, and after that we see why C9 is so good if they play together. Perfect execute dive, they just get all the kills, Jenkins dies, and yeah, Mundo's unkillable at this point. You cannot kill Mundo anymore.
It's the boots of swiftest, man.
The boots of swiftest, man. But there's no answer to Mundo in teamfights. That's why Mundo is, in my eyes, such a strong pick. Once he gets going with his items, he's like unkillable tank. He's like a hyper tank, basically.
I mean, it's funny that Hai gets criticized all the time for his mechanics, even though he pulled out like the Lee Sin. He flashed mid-animation on the Pulverize there. That's still fairly difficult to pull off. I mean, obviously on low ping, but...
yeah, that's the thing. In NA, he probably didn't have enough, like, ping to practice. With 60 ping, it's a bit difficult, I think, but luckily for him, we're playing on LAN. With like 10 MS, so it's no problem for him.
But the one thing that I have to kind of question is the fact that C9 won because H2k did a lot of mistakes. And looking at C9's like drafts as a whole, I feel like the Alistar kind of shows that Hai, as a support, is going to have a weaker champion pool, because on paper, Alistar is usually something that you don't want to pick into a trundle because it's considered a counter matchup in a way, and it's counterintuitive because you want to pick something ranged into trundle. But then again, Alistar secured the game because of the team fighting, but it's something to keep in mind for the future.
Right, so it kind of works in both ways, maybe a little bit in favor for Hai, but at the same time, it depends on how the opponents use it against him. We'll have to see if H2k is up for that task, of course, coming into Game 2. We just finished Cloud9 leading 1-0, and we will be going to a short break before we come back into the picks and bans for Game number 2.